Hello, my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. This one is still a little bit of time spent between finishing the book and actually filming this, but less than some of the other belated reviews. So today I am reviewing Mask of the Nobleman by Laura Diaz de Arce. And full transparency, Laura is a very close friend of mine. We talk a ton. There are certain secrets about me very few people know that she knows, so I am probably going to be biased to like whatever she writes more so than a lot of people. But she was hesitant to actually send me this one because this is not like the sci-fi or horror works that I've reviewed of her before. It is a fairy tale retelling, specifically the fairy tale East of the Sun, West of the Moon. And at first, I might have been hesitant to do a review of this myself, but East of the Sun, West of the Moon is one of my favorite fairy tales. It's in the Beauty and the Beast like subgenre of fairy tales, but I'm not going to describe it only because it's not quite as well known as some other fairy tales, and so I think you could still go into it a little bit blindly, because obviously if you know the fairy tale, you know exactly what's going to happen, especially at the end of this book, so I don't want to spoil it if I can avoid it. This is all about a young sculptor and woodcarver named Petra who desperately wants to get her own work out in the world, but because of sexism is forced to operate under her father's name so that people don't try to, underpay for her work. And during this one festival for the village, she makes this wood statue of a goddess and enters it hoping to win, but only gets second place because, of course, the winner was one that portrayed the goddess as super ultra feminine and peaking swans and everything. But she does catch the eye of the local duke, who is a bit of a strange man in himself because he is always covered head to toe at all times. No one has laid eyes on him. No one knows what he looks like. The rumor is that he is some kind of disfigured, but nobody knows for sure. No one has seen him in person, his whole face, since he was a child. And he is taken in by her artwork and hires her on the spot to carve out the doorways in his manor home. So she goes to live with him, and I mean, come on. You know what's happening next. Feelings start happening next, but not right away. And I appreciated that. Petra begins to meet some of the other staff members, and there definitely begins to form this found family dynamic, and I really appreciated that. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit nervous at first. I was like, where are the queer people, Laura? Don't let me down, Laura. Where are all my queer people? They do come out. LOL. They are there. It just takes a little bit into the story for their queerness to be revealed. Although one of my personal favorite characters, which she knew was going to be my favorite because, again, we were texting over the course of the story, was this other noblewoman named Elle, who is a close friend of the Duke's and is such a gigantic lesbian that all of her handmaidens have to wear veils so as not to tempt her because not queer norm. It's not a queer norm story. I can't have everything. But I appreciated that there were just so many. There's another sapphic couple. There is a delightful chaos bisexual Marcus who hits on everyone. And I appreciated that. Although for a little bit I was afraid that he was like genuinely trying to flirt with Petra and take her away from the Duke. And I was a little bit annoyed by that. But the relationship between Petra and the Duke goes pretty quickly once it starts. Like it doesn't start super immediately, but it kind of takes off. Now, obviously, there's no love at first sight purely because, she can't see him. But they find a lot of common ground in background and wanting to be known for themselves and that kind of thing. And it definitely shoots off like a fairy tale romance usually does. And that was probably one of my biggest struggles with this was this writing style is very different from Laura's previous work. Her sci-fi and her horror and her darker contemporary stuff that was all in the short story collection are very forms of informal writing, very forward, usually filled with epithets or curse words. So this one was a definite change in direction. And as we were talking, she even tossed out the idea of putting this under a pen name purely because it felt so different than the other work she'd done before. But of course, it's always difficult to get out a pen name and like build two author brands essentially at once. So it's usually safer to stick to one name if you're going to be publishing work. But in general, that was the biggest reason that I couldn't give this the full 5 stars was it was a very formalized, step back kind of writing style, which is not usually my favorite, and which is why a lot of the time I tend to not go for fairy tales or fairy tale retellings, because there were certain moments where it was kind of just an overview of what was going on to move on to the next thing, because so much time was being gone over in a short period of time. I believe there's like, over the course of the story, at least I think almost half a year. Like a whole summer goes by in like a chapter or 2. So it definitely moves quick, but I appreciated all of the queer rep. I did like the relationship, even though it moved a little bit quick. I have to understand that I am just a sucker for a slow burn. I want the angst and the yearning to be drawn out just that little bit more before we get to the I love yous. But the real catch was the ending. Like I mentioned before, this is a retelling, so if you know a bit about the East of the Sun, West of the Moon story, you have a general idea of what happens. Curiosity wins out, and other things happen. And a big part of the marketing for this book is, could you love someone you can't see? And admittedly, I think that theme was a lot more poignant in an era when we weren't always making friends with people we couldn't see. Like, I feel like that whole idea of she can't see him, but she loves him, can this be true, made a lot more sense before the internet, where we were already making, best friends with people based on their avatars. But I was intrigued because while I knew at about what part this book will be ending at, because it is a series, and if you know anything about the original story, you can kind of guess where this one is going to end, and then the next one is going to be about the next thing. I was impressed with how the exact, how do I do this without spoiling? I was impressed with how it definitely paid homage to the original story, but I was wholly unprepared for exactly how it went off. Is that vague enough, but also descriptive enough? I'm always nervous when I start talking about endings, but they're always one of the parts of the books I want to talk about the most. So this is not the nicest ending for this book, but of course it's a romance series, so you can usually be sure that it's not going to be all hearts and flowers by the end of this one. Still, despite the formalized writing style, I did still enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm still looking forward to some of the author's other sci-fi work. She has promised me Brujas in space, and I want it. I want legitimate own voices Brujas in space, Laura. I want it. Anyway, I still enjoyed this book. If you are a big fan of, I believe this would be new adult fantasy or fairy tale retellings, this will probably be all your bag. For me, it's not. So, anyway, this would usually be the part of the video where I do the whole, if you're an indie author and you would like a review, but I'm still closed. Hopefully by the end of November, I want to be like really, really far into my list with very few review books left on the list before I open up again, because I'm tired of closing like every other month. So, end of November, hopefully, I will be able to review requests again. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.